Have you ever read a book which is not based out of its author's imagination? In other words, a non-fiction book? If you have, you may think that non-fiction books are boring or hard to understand. However, if you like what the book is talking about, you may find it interesting. I used to read a lot of fiction books. As I stepped into reading non-fiction, my interest began to shift slowly towards them. One of my first reads in this genre of books was a book called Discovering Science by Childcraft. I loved it. As I read more of the book, I noticed that it told me about many things that I come across in my day-to-day life. For example, how my bike stops when I apply its brakes and how it's related to how a merry-go-round stops when I put my foot down. They both use friction, a term that I had never heard of before, a force that I didn't know at that time. I got more and more of such books since then. I realized over time that these books also entertain us, but they do so by telling us about real things and true stories. They teach us about the world around us. So the time spent reading them is worthwhile because we gain knowledge in this process. This habit of reading made what I used to think was complicated very easy and fun. It made science and technology fun, geography fun, history and places fun, and the list goes on. These books can prompt us to build on the knowledge that we have gained. They can make us creative. I've worked on several interesting science projects because of non-fiction reading. Books have been my constant companions since I was 3 months old. Until I was 6, I hadn't read a single non-fiction book. I used to think that such books were for adults and teenagers. I lived in Ashland, Massachusetts until I was 5. The cold weather meant I couldn't get out much. Ashland had a great library. So, my mom would often take me there and would spend a lot of time reading. Would also borrow plenty of books. Just like many other children my age, I loved reading Curious George, Frog and Toad, Cars, Toy Story, Dr. Seuss, Richard Scarry, and many more. Although I've been picking my own books and reading them since I was 5, I was hesitant to pick a non-fiction book. I wasn't sure if these books were to my liking or not. At that time, most of the non-fiction books in my house belonged to my parents, and they were thick and had almost no pictures. The letters in them were very small. Once, I remember looking over my dad's shoulder as he was reading a book called Operating Systems. In just a few seconds, I decided that I wouldn't like it. One day, my mom got me some books from the library. She didn't categorize them as non-fiction or fiction books. She just said, "I got some interesting books for you." There was a book called Rubbish and Recycling in there. It had under 4 lines per page, and most of every page was covered with a large picture. This encouraged me to pick it up. Later, I started reading bigger and bigger books, mostly on science. I was always curious about science. Reading these books just increased my curiosity. I realized that there was more science than I thought. I wanted to know more. Even today, I want to know all of it. So, I never stopped reading these books since I laid my hands upon them. You may think that I reduced the amount of time I spend reading when I stepped into reading non-fiction. Actually, it was the opposite. I find them so interesting that I spend more time reading them than before. Now, I'd like to share 5 benefits that I experience because of non-fiction reading. I'd like to call the first benefit knowing before seeing. A book called The Story of India convinced my family to take a trip to Kerala. Let me tell you how this happened. The book talked about a rocket launching station called Tumba Rocket Launching Station. It's one of the busiest rocket launching stations in the world. I told my parents about it. We researched on the upcoming launches and learned that a launch happens every month. We visited the next one. At the launch site, there's a space museum too. To my parents' surprise, I knew about many of the things that I was looking at for the first time already. This is why I got the benefit knowing before seeing. It means I knew what was there before I actually saw it. These things included many of the satellites, the rockets, and the space terminology like payloads, rovers, their functionalities, their lifespan, and more such information which my parents didn't know. I was happy to be their guide throughout our visit. It was my first time watching a rocket take off, and this was a very happy experience for me, especially because I could understand what was happening. This was because of reading about rockets. The second benefit is reading non-fiction books also improved my understanding of several STEM topics like electricity, magnetism, computers, and mathematics. I was always fascinated by electricity. From my knowledge of electricity through books, I understand the functionalities of several electrical components like transistors, resistors, capacitors, and how they are used in electrical devices. I work on my own projects with the help of this learning, and I built an electrical regulator with a fan, a motorboat, a voice recording device, and so on. The third benefit is lessons that I learn from books spark many ideas in my mind. I get new ideas every day to create new things. I brainstorm them with my parents. I plan to start my own organization when I grow up, which will allow me to bring my ideas to life. Earlier, I would mostly come up with ideas to make human life easier. Now, after reading a great deal about environmental issues like soil degradation, global warming, and poaching, I feel responsible for protecting our planet. Now, I also try to come up with solutions to environmental problems. I designed a machine on paper that can plant trees automatically. Planting trees helps the earth recover from several environmental problems. The fourth benefit is the habit of reading non-fiction helped me get comfortable with opening up any book effortlessly. I read the car manual to my car and told my father how to operate all the functionalities that it has. From a book called Art Around Us, I work on art and craft projects. From a book called Math Magic, I show my friends and family some math tricks. I find a book called Exploring the Past very interesting. It's about how early humans used to do things, their challenges, and how they overcame them. Because of encountering different kinds of words which are not used in everyday conversations in these books, my vocabulary multiplied. I know the spellings and meanings of many different kinds of words without trying to learn them. Now, I am open to reading about advanced concepts and ideas. Because of this quality, I am able to work on projects designed for any age. I put my hands into computer programming at the age of 6 and won third prize internationally in a competition meant for 7 to 8-year-olds. I've been working on Build to Launch, a course material provided by Lego Education in partnership with NASA's Artemis 1 team. I participated in a class called Rocket Mastery where I got to design my own rocket. I was the youngest participant in the class, which included students who were in college. I didn't feel like I was the youngest, though, because I could understand the class. My books taught me about many of the words that were used in the class, like Mach means the speed of sound, what is center of gravity, and so on. The courage and confidence to freely be a part of anything that I'm curious about without restricting myself to my age group came from non-fiction reading. Research says that non-fiction books for children provide an opportunity to see books as vehicles for understanding the world around them as well as for finding answers to their questions. Professor Lester Laminack from Western Carolina University said, "Nonfiction develops and extends the vocabulary and helps the child connect to the natural world." He also said that these books fuel curiosity. This holds true for me. All in all, I'd like to share that non-fiction books not only entertain me, but give me knowledge and experiences which makes me feel empowered. Empowered to learn more about the magnificent world around us. If you are as curious as me in any specific field of study, you should put your hands into non-fiction books. I would say what we as humans know is very little. What we are yet to know is vast. Therefore, when we understand that what's really so vast and fascinating and so many things can be done when we learn about it, our attention will rarely shift towards fiction. Thank you.